Hello, everyone. I would like to talk today on the corposphere, about the corposphere, which is this field of semiotics that has to deal with all the meaning processes related to the body. I would like today to talk about body trajectories, and I have called this presentation Body Trajectories from Silencing to Body Voices. I think it's a subject very interesting for our research about how the body is a tool for signification processes and communication processes. And I think that the main reason of studying the many possibilities of communication from our own body, from the body in society, from body in cultures, and from the many possibilities that the body has for communication and for meaning-making processes. Certainly, the body has been looked upon as a subject very interesting, not only in semiotics, but also in anthropology, in philosophy, in sociology. And there are so many contributions to this field that we have to take into account in order to have a much better analysis and interpretation of the presence and acting of body voices in our world. So let's talk about this, some of these possibilities of the relationship of the body with culture, society, and today I would like to talk particularly about the body itself and about the sounds of the body and how these sounds and processes of going from the interior and the exterior of the body are very, very interesting to try to comprehend their functioning in order to have more tools to interpret cultures and society in our modern world. As you know, the dominant conceptions, meanings, and senses of the body in a society are key indicators for the interpretation of the practices, imaginaries, and attitude that its members develop in the different scenarios. Therefore, we consider that without an anthropology and a semiotics of the body, our interpretative approaches of the societies and the cultures we observe, or on those where we live, will always be partial, incomplete, when not diverted or misrepresented. So we have to pay a lot of attention to what semiotics and anthropology have to say about the body and their meaning and communication possibilities in our societies. If we do not do that, we risk of diverting or misrepresenting our analysis and interpretation of the body in cultural societies. The whole body, and at all times, even in spite of itself, means the body is permanently in movement or in repose. The body is permanently signifying and communicating. So it's an instrument of culture and society that we cannot miss in our analysis of cultures and societies. So the body, why? Because the body is our fundamental instrument of semiotization of the world. The body is our most extraordinary instrument of making sense and giving sense of the world. So that's why I say that in the corposphere, we find the multiple languages, spaces, times, actors, and experiences that in the world of life the body expresses. As I said before, I'm going to talk today about the trajectories of the body, movement, actions of the body. The trajectories of the body, understood as an object both public and private, natural and cultural, are subject to the social restrictions that control their presence, their poses, their displacement, their accessibility, and also their perceptual mode, both visual and sound, tactile, odoriferous, and even gustatory. In their initial definition, body and trajectory are inseparably intersected. For example, the Dictionary of the Royal Academy of the Spanish Language itself states this: a trajectory is a line described in the plane or in space by a moving body. So, moving body is the way how we defined trajectory. And from the semiotic point of view, moving body is also complemented by the posing body. So, as I said in other texts, pose and movement are two active ways of the body being in the world. And so body movement and body poses are two ways of meaning and communication, interacting with the world in a specific context of culture and society. If trajectories mean movement and displacement, how they occur and what they mean in the body. Thus, from the point of view of a corporality being performed and acted in the actual world, from the body's out of itself, the body is defined, among other characteristics, by its relationships, its history, its position, but also for its trajectories, for the motion vectors that characterize it. Among these motion vectors, we might look at the quality, intensity, direction, that are forces that in concrete context define a sense. So, one way of looking at trajectories in the case of the body is looking about these forces: the quality, the intensity, the direction, in concrete context, historical, cultural, social, political, etc., context, which will help us to understand the definition of senses constructed by the body when the body is in trajectories, is movement, is in this displacement. But it is also possible to find other trajectories from the point of view of the body itself, which mean entering its morphology, its constitution, its organization and functioning. One of them is that which is carried out in the bodily dialectic between internal and external realms of the body, between its limits and boundaries, between the inside and the outside of the body. Within the framework of this visual saturation that phenomena such as the selfie have created, in that world of pure exteriority, it is convenient to reflect on the semiotic dialectic between interiority and exteriority, between its conflicts and tension, between its imaginary and its physicality. We suggest establishing at least 3 body trajectories that are at the base of the configuration of certain body images. These trajectories are expressed in at least 3 directions. First, the body out of itself. So the trajectory going from the interior towards the exterior, and the relationship and movement that we can find in these directions. The second one is the body in of itself, which is the relation that goes from the exterior to the interior, and the relationship that we might find there. The third one is what I call the body in between, which has to do with the dialectic relationship outside, inside. In the semiotic analysis of these 3 trajectories, it is very important to take into consideration the role of the skin as a biological and symbolic frontier between interior and exterior. I'm not going to elaborate on this realm about the skin, but I have done that before in other texts and talks. But a further analysis of what I'm going to present today has to do with the skin, not only as a biological element, but particularly as a symbolic element full of possibilities that will help us to understand the relationship between what is interior to the body and what is exterior, and moreover, how the transit between one realm and another happens. The regulation, vigilance, and control of the perceptual mode of corporeality is what we call the silences of the body. A concept that not only has to do with sound aspect, but also includes the other forms of perception that the human body is endowed with, and that are based generally on body trajectories that go from the inside to the outside. Historically, Western societies have imposed the silencing of the noises and rumors of our body. If we look, for example, at some of the cultural imaginaries and social sensitivities that are related to the relationship and movements of the trajectories between interior and exterior of the body, we will see that in much of Western culture, such relationships and movement are marked by a negative or dysphoric semantic value. In many societies, the body must be silenced when its expressions come from within. Examples of these are belching, flatulence, cough, urination, sweat, feces, mucus, snoring, etc. The concept of silencing the body refers not only to sound manifestation, as I said before, but also to expressions related to taste, touch, hearing, and sight. Some bodily manifestations can move from negative assessment to a positive one, thanks to senses activated according to the situational context. In an intimate marital context today, flatulence is euphorically valued as an expression of trust and stability. Rodriguez, for example, points out that, I quote, releasing flatulence in front of your partner is a way to demonstrate intimate connection. End of quote. Requena talks about the spiritual and psychological meaning of gases whose presence would indicate that, I quote, we fear losing something, end of quote. But also at the institutional level, for example, we have the research at the University of Exeter in England that shows that flatulence and rotten eggs contain an element that can become a health hero. And I quote, although hydrogen sulfide is well known as a pungent, foul-smelling gas in rotten eggs and flatulence, it is naturally produced in the body and could in fact be a healthcare hero with significant implications for future therapies for a variety of diseases. End of quote. The negative sense of feces, for example, and flatulence is of biblical origin. I quote, and you will eat barley bread cooked under the ash, and you will cook it inside of them with the manures that come out of man. And the Lord said, thus shall the children of Israel eat their unclean bread among the nations where I will throw them. That's in Ezekiel chapter 4, 12, 13. So, as you can see, there are a general tendency to attribute a bad imaginary, a bad value to noises, substances, and rumors that come from inside the body. But this general tendency to silence objects, sounds, or substances that transit from the interior to the outside of the body finds exceptions, as it is in the case of tears, a phenomenon that could find explanation at least partially in the fact that they occur in a prestigious microcontext, which is the face, but also in a prestigious, considered, estimated context of emotions. Tears express emotions that we usually tend to sympathize with. So this context might explain this exception to substances, to the idea of looking bad at the substance and noises and rumors coming from the inside. The second trajectories, 2, that goes from the external to the internal of the body, has to do with ways of entering from the exterior to the interior of the body and reflect over the conceptions and imaginaries related to this trajectory. So, faced with the silences of the body, reverse trajectories arise from different scientific and non-scientific domains that listen to the bodily voices and claim their inner search in a process of subversion of the social corporeity. Medical sciences, for example, have performed a rupture of the sacredness of the body, of which I remember you, St. Paul spoke to us. In fact, St. Paul said, "Do you know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you were bought at a price. Therefore, glorify God with your body." The medical sciences have tried to listen to the voices of the body in at least 4 ways that I propose to call as the following way. First, semiotic exploration that goes from external science, studied by medical semiology, to internal symptoms and causes. As you know, students of the medical careers also usually have in their curricula a subject named semiology, which tries to understand symptoms, signs of the body as symptoms of certain diseases. The second way of exploring the voices of the body is what I call vestibular examinations, expressed on examination of the mouth, rectal touch, etc. Has to do with touching parts of the body, examining part of the body without entering it. The third one is what I call extravestibular examination, expressed on X-rays, CT scans, etc., where medical science use devices, technological devices, to go into the body without penetrating it. And finally, there are intra-body examination, which is ways of violating the body boundaries expressed, for example, on endoscopies, cameras, colonoscopies, catheterizations, etc. So these are 4 ways by which medical sciences realize this second trajectory, which means going from the external world to the internal world of the body. And this, as I will say, these ways of going into the body as some semiotic representation in culture, in societies, that we have to deal with in order to understand how societies and culture evaluate, conceive the body and the possibilities of going into it or going out of it. But beyond the medical sciences, there are also the poetic discourse that goes with imagination inside the body. The poetic discourse often transits freely from the outside into the bodily interior, as seen, for example, in the beautiful poem Corporality of the Spanish-Peruvian semiotician Desiderio Blanco. I will just read a small part of this beautiful poem. The poem says, "The glow of your body floods all my shelled joints, and through the glass of your fragrant eyes I penetrate the transparent regions of remote mysterious universes. The multiform network of your veins trace unknown route to the runaway furrows of my fractal fracture desired." From the Ciderio Blanco, as I said. But also, I will show you another example of taking from the visual arts. Art also has begun to transit through the interior of the body. An example is the work of Ana Isabel Diaz named Interior Landscape, in which she shows photos of the interior body of women who have been violated. I will also show you this small part of the video that she has transformed non-artistic art. Is a scientific video made as an intervention from medical sciences into the body of these violated women. In this medical video, the artist links the physiological interiority of women with a statement about abuse by their partners. The author uses images obtained through videos of real hysteroscopies intervening with sounds and text with a statement of battered and abused women. Let's go to the third trajectory, which is this dialectical relationship between inside and outside. And an example that I have here to present to you is taken also from the medical sciences. Trajectory 3 is, as I said, characterized by body entry and exit processes. In medical sciences, they can be at least of three types. The first one is extraction, like in tumor surgery, tonsils extraction, etc. Has to be with entering the body and taking out some part of it. The second one is what I call extraction and reposition, like in techniques like the dialysis, where technicians, doctors take the blood of the person outside, pass it through a machine, and put it back inside the body. That's what I call extraction and repositions. And the third one is extraction and substitution, where, like in transplants, where you doctors take an organ from the interior of the body and replace that organ with another different organ. So these three ways of this dialectical relationship from interior and exterior is supposed to go in and out in different modalities. I think that this classification of ways of entering and going in and out of the body shows have created imaginaries and representation of how the body is, but at the same time have created our cultural conception and imaginaries about the medical discourse and how this medical discourse have good representation, good ideas, good values of the way in which these technologies deals with body. It's different, which is very different from the first trajectory, where these processes of taking out from the interior of the body, taking out substances, noises, and rumors are valued in a bad way as representation with bad negative ideas and consideration in our cultures. The trajectories presented here imply the creation of body images of a great wealth and variety, with a great cultural and social weight. As we have seen, the interior-exterior trajectory, with its negative assessment of the element produced and impulsed by the body, implies that within its internal limits, the body is perceived as dirty, polluting, dangerous for being the space of diseases, tumors, infections, and disorders. If we look at the historical and cultural context, we will see that these perceptions are a corollary of the all-body-soul dichotomy, in which the former has no value, because compared to the latter, it is a ballast, perishable, expire, sinful. Ideas that come from many of the main religions that has been studied regarding the subject of the body before. On the other hand, the exterior-interior trajectory, the second one, seems more prestigious for its links with scientific and artistic discourse, while the former breaks with the old sacrality of the body, the scientific discourse. It also creates a kind of new sacredness that attribute prestige and true value to medical discourse. When this trajectory is realized by devices of artistic discourse, it appears as critical and innovative, capable of bringing semiotic poles away from each other. In this case, intra-body exploration and social criticism. Other trajectories of the body. It is possible to develop new schemes of the trajectories of the body that should be related to other criteria like spatial, temporal, and actorial devices. In that sense, for example, the meanings that we attribute to forward and backward movement should be valued. Thus, for example, in certain contexts, the frontal trajectories of the body are associated with bravery or future. Here, the space in front of the body, be it real or imaginary, is a space euphorically considered and valued. On the contrary, other trajectories, typical, for example, of the backward movement, related to the back of the body, have negative assessment. Thus, going back on the trajectory, on the bodily trajectory, implies connotations such as escape, defeat, fear, etc. So, finally, when we have distinguished between limits and boundaries of the body, we have suggested that the porosity of such limits and boundaries creates semiotic spaces that fit social imaginary of a great social and cultural significance. So, by proposing you these reflections from the corpus sphere, and by approaching the transit between corporal interiority and exteriority to its neighborhoods, transit zones, and ambiguities, we can reconstruct a conception of corporeality as it is understood and practiced by specific societies and at a specific historical moments and cultures. So finally, what it is important in this talk, or I think that it is important in relation to the study of these trajectories in the realm of corpus sphere, it is to try to understand how cultures and societies see the body in movement and in pose, see the realms of interior and exterior, and see the dialectic relationship between one and another. I hope that this idea will stimulate us to look at the body not only at itself, but particularly in the context where these bodies are performing, acting, being, live in the realms of real world. Thank you very much.